There comes a time in life when everything feels off. You look around and realize that the life you're living, the routines, the conversations, the goals, no longer feel like they belong to you. You've done what you were supposed to do. You've followed the path laid out by expectations, advice, and logic, and yet something is missing. A subtle ache, a quiet, persistent question. Is this all? It's easy to mistake this feeling for failure or fatigue. You tell yourself you're just tired, that maybe you're being ungrateful. You convince yourself to push through, to keep going, to wait for things to make sense again. But what if this discomfort isn't a problem? What if it's a sign? What if the very feeling of being stuck is your soul trying to move? Carl Jung believed that life doesn't fall out of alignment by accident. He saw confusion not as weakness, but as a powerful message from the unconscious. A signal that something deeper within you is asking to be heard, because before anything new can emerge, the old must first stop fitting. And it often begins like this: restlessness, dissatisfaction, a sense that you've outgrown your own life. It's not that the world is against you, it's that you are outgrowing the version of yourself that once built this world around you. And as hard as it is to admit, the friction you feel may be the first sign that you're being redirected, not by chance but by necessity. So if you're feeling lost, misaligned, or quietly detached from everything that used to make sense, pause, not to fix it, but to listen. Because this misalignment may be your invitation, not to go harder, but to go deeper. When things begin to unravel, the first instinct is almost always to look outward. We blame the job, the relationship, the city, the timing. We rearrange furniture, chase new goals, book a trip, change our diet, hoping the discomfort inside will quiet down. But it doesn't, not for long. Carl Jung warned us of this exact trap, trying to solve inner disorder with outer rearrangement. He believed that no amount of external adjustment can fix what is fundamentally a misalignment of the soul. Because the root of the problem isn't what's around you, it's what you're no longer aligned with within you. It's easy to get distracted by shiny solutions, new projects, new people, new distractions that feel like progress but delay the truth. You can change your surroundings 100 times, but if the disconnection inside remains unaddressed, you'll find yourself right back where you started, only more exhausted. Jung didn't offer quick fixes. He pointed inward, toward the uncomfortable work of self-inquiry. He asked, "What part of you have you been ignoring? What truth have you buried under busyness?" Because that's where the shift begins. Not in the job title, not in the apartment, not even in the relationship, but in the quiet decision to stop searching for rescue and start listening to yourself. When your outer world no longer reflects your inner truth, no upgrade can fix the ache. You don't need more things to do, you need space to ask better questions. So if it feels like nothing out there is working, maybe it's because the answer isn't out there. It's been waiting patiently within you all along. At first, the cracks appear quietly. You start to feel a subtle tension in conversations you once enjoyed. The work you used to take pride in now feels like a costume you can't wait to take off. Even your dreams, those goals you chased for years, begin to feel strangely hollow. It's confusing, because on the surface nothing's wrong. You've done everything right, followed the path, checked the boxes, built the life. But something inside you knows this life no longer fits. Carl Jung would say this isn't failure, it's growth. You haven't lost your way, you're outgrowing it. The roles, relationships, and routines that once held you are now the very things pressing against you, like a skin that's grown too tight, a chapter that's ended even if the page hasn't yet turned. We are taught to see this as a crisis, but Jung invites us to see it differently, as a signal, a message from the unconscious whispering, "You're not who you used to be, and this life was built for who you were, not who you're becoming." It's not that your relationships are broken or your goals were a mistake. They were right for a version of you that's now fading into the past, and that's okay. Growth doesn't always begin with inspiration. Sometimes it starts with restlessness, with the growing realization that your outer world can no longer contain your inner evolution. So when the things that once defined you begin to feel unfamiliar, don't panic, don't rush to fix or force. The cracks are not a sign of collapse. They're proof that your soul is expanding, and expansion always begins by breaking what no longer fits. There's a pattern you may have noticed in your life. You meet the same kind of person over and over. You end up in familiar arguments, repeat the same emotional loops, feel the same hurt that you promised yourself you'd never feel again. And each time you wonder, why is this happening to me? Carl Jung had an answer, one of his most powerful. He called it the shadow. The shadow isn't some external force. It's the part of yourself you don't want to see, the emotions you were taught to suppress, the impulses you were told were unacceptable, the truth about you that didn't fit the story you were trying to live. But here's the thing. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It hides. And then it acts out. It shows up in your frustration at other people. It shows up in your jealousy, your defensiveness, your quiet rage. It shows up in the people you judge the most, and in the situations that trigger you deeply. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The shadow is the mirror life holds up to you, not to shame you, but to make you whole. Every struggle that repeats, every painful dynamic that returns, isn't just misfortune. It's a message from your unconscious, a reflection of something you haven't yet faced within yourself. To see your shadow is uncomfortable, it's humbling, but it's also the start of true transformation, because once you become aware of it, really aware, you stop projecting your pain onto others. You stop looking for enemies in the outside world. You stop trying to fix people and start healing yourself, and that's when everything begins to change. The shadow loses its grip, your relationships shift, and the struggles that once haunted you begin to lose their power. Not because life becomes easier, but because you've taken back the part of yourself that you once left in the dark. Pain has a way of stopping everything. It pulls you out of the noise and the motion of your life and forces you into stillness, into questions you didn't want to ask. Most of us were taught to view pain as a sign that something's gone wrong, that we failed, misstepped, or were somehow being punished. But Carl Jung saw it differently. He believed that pain is not a mistake. It's not random. It's a precise, intelligent signal from your unconscious. It comes when your outer life is no longer aligned with your inner truth. It arrives when the persona, the mask you wear, is cracking, when the roles, the routines, the beliefs you've carried no longer fit who you are becoming. Pain is how the soul gets your attention. It doesn't speak in polite sentences. It doesn't ask for permission. It breaks through the noise with sharp clarity, saying, "This cannot continue. Something must change." And if you're willing to listen, not just to fix it, not just to silence it, but to actually sit with it, you may find that your deepest pain carries your clearest message, that the discomfort is not there to ruin your life, but to restore your alignment, to break open the parts of you that need to grow, to push you into truth you've been avoiding. Pain, in this light, is not your enemy. It's a guide. And sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do is to stop resisting it and start listening. If today's message helped you remember something quiet and essential, that the answers aren't out there but in here, then you already know what Jung tried to teach us. You're not broken, you're returning. If you felt that truth stir in you, consider subscribing. We explore these inner paths together, one reflection at a time. And if someone you love is searching for clarity in the middle of their chaos, share this story with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer is a reminder they already hold the map. There comes a moment, quiet but unmistakable, when the life you've built begins to feel too tight. Not because anything has gone terribly wrong, but because you've outgrown it. The roles, the routines, even some of the relationships, they were once exactly what you needed. They brought safety, structure, identity. But now, they feel heavy, stagnant, like wearing someone else's clothes. And still, we hold on. We cling to what is known because the unknown feels like falling. Because no one teaches us how to let go of a life that technically works, but no longer fits our soul. Carl Jung understood this. He said that the greatest source of suffering isn't loss itself, it's resistance to change. When we grip too tightly to what is finished, we stall the very transformation we long for. Letting go doesn't mean erasing the past. It means honoring it, then releasing it. It means choosing truth over comfort, growth over repetition, and it means trusting that the space left behind isn't empty. It's sacred. It's where something new can finally take root. Not because you forced it, but because you finally made room for it to arrive. After letting go, what remains is silence. Not relief, not clarity. At least not right away, just a quiet emptiness. A strange in-between space where the old is gone, but the new hasn't yet arrived. Carl Jung called this space the void. And while it may feel like failure or collapse, he saw it as something profoundly sacred, because in the void, the ego no longer holds the map. Certainty dissolves, control slips away. And it is precisely in this nothingness that the truth begins to whisper, not through logic but through presence, not with answers but with new questions. Most people try to escape this stage, to fill the silence, rush into the next thing, grab onto any structure that feels familiar. But the void isn't something to escape. It's the dark soil where your next self is seeded. It's where transformation begins, not with a bang, but with stillness. If you can stay long enough to listen, stay long enough not to flinch, you'll begin to feel it. Not loss, but possibility. Not destruction, but the quiet beginning of rebirth. When the mind no longer has answers and the world grows silent, something else begins to speak. It's not loud, it doesn't shout. It comes as a nudge, a gut feeling, a quiet knowing that doesn't explain itself, yet refuses to be ignored. Carl Jung believed that intuition is not a luxury, it is a necessity, a direct connection to the unconscious, to the deeper truth that logic can't always reach. We're taught to ignore it, to doubt what can't be measured, to defer to reason even when reason leads us in circles. But intuition doesn't play by those rules. It won't give you a 5-step plan. It won't always justify itself, but it will guide you if you are brave enough to follow it. Especially in the void, especially when you're standing at a crossroads and nothing on paper makes sense. That's when intuition becomes your compass. not to lead you back into the familiar, but to lead you forward into the life you were meant to live. Have you ever thought of someone only to have them call seconds later, or stumbled across the exact message you needed at the very moment you were about to give up? Carl Jung had a name for this: synchronicity. Not coincidence, not luck, but a meaningful convergence when outer events mirror inner shifts. Synchronicity happens when the unconscious breaks the surface, when your inner world and the outer world begin to echo one another. It's life whispering back, yes, this is the way. You can't plan for it, you can't manufacture it, but you can become attuned to it. And when you do, the ordinary begins to shimmer. You notice patterns, a phrase that repeats in different places, a song that seems to follow you, a symbol that appears just when you're lost. It's not about superstition, it's about listening. Because Jung believed the unconscious does not speak in sentences. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in impulses, in the alignment of moments that feel too precise to ignore. To someone asleep, these moments pass unnoticed, but to someone awakening, they're like constellations in a dark sky, guiding, affirming, inviting you forward. So when your life begins to stir with these echoes, pay attention, don't dismiss them. That conversation that felt out of place, that stranger's words that went straight to your heart, that delay that rerouted your entire day, and yet brought you exactly where you needed to be. These are not accidents, they are signs. And the more you trust them, the more they appear. Because synchronicity isn't about control, it's about alignment. A reminder that when you stop pushing and start listening, the path will begin to light itself, one sign at a time. There's a voice inside you, quiet but relentless. It doesn't shout, but it never stops whispering, "You're not good enough. You always mess this up. Who do you think you are to try?" Carl Jung understood this voice intimately. He called it part of the inner war, the battlefield between who you are and who you were taught to be. This voice isn't the enemy, it's a fragment, a younger, wounded piece of you that still carries the judgments you absorbed long ago. It wears the masks of old teachers, parents, culture, echoes of fear dressed as discipline. Most of us try to silence it. We drown it out with work, distraction, perfectionism. But avoidance gives it more power. Because what you bury doesn't die, it festers. Jung taught that transformation begins not when you win the war, but when you listen to the voice with compassion. Ask it, what are you really afraid of? What do you need me to understand? You may be surprised by the answer. Sometimes your harshest inner critic is just the frightened child inside you, desperate to be protected, but using the only language it knows, control. Facing the inner critic isn't easy. It means sitting in the discomfort of your doubts, your shame, your perceived failures. But when you face it, really face it, you strip it of its power to define you. You stop mistaking that voice for truth, and in its place, a new voice emerges, one that says, "You made mistakes, but you're still worthy. You were hurt, but you're healing. You're learning, you're evolving, you're enough." That's not ego, that's integration. And in that moment, you're no longer at war with yourself, you're walking beside yourself, finally as an ally. The moments that feel like falling apart are often the ones where everything real begins. If this story mirrored something in your life, something shifting, something uncertain, know that you are not alone. Jung showed us, it's not destruction, it's transformation. If that resonated, subscribing keeps you connected to these deeper truths. And if someone you care for is quietly facing their own unknown, this message may be the spark they've been waiting for. There comes a moment on the path of transformation when the excuses run dry, not because life demands perfection, but because your soul demands truth. Carl Jung didn't believe healing was about becoming better. He believed it was about becoming real, peeling away the layers of masks you've worn to finally meet yourself unfiltered. That takes more courage than most people realize, because real honesty, radical self-honesty, doesn't just ask, "What do I want?" It also asks, "What have I been avoiding? Who have I been pretending to be?" You begin to see the stories you've told yourself, the roles you've played to earn love, to stay safe, to fit into a life that no longer reflects you. And at first, that clarity can be brutal. You realize you said yes when you meant no. You stayed quiet when your heart begged to speak. You chased goals that were never truly yours. But Jung knew, this is the threshold, the moment when you stop polishing the mask and begin listening to the face beneath it. This honesty breaks illusions, not to shame you, but to free you. Because the moment you stop trying to be acceptable and start trying to be authentic, you reclaim your power. Authenticity is not about shouting your truth from the rooftops. It's about walking your truth in silence, even when no one claps. It's about making decisions that feel right in your bones, even if they confuse others. It's about honoring what's real in you, even when it costs you comfort. That's the new path. Not a path of perfection, but a path of integrity. And with every step, you're no longer becoming someone new. You're returning to who you've always been. Imagine for a moment that your life is not a road you pave brick by brick, but a river you're meant to float down. You may try to steer it, to redirect it, to cling to rocks and fallen branches out of fear. But Jung would tell you, the river already knows where it's going. We spend so much time wrestling with life, trying to force it into a shape that feels safe or familiar or approved of. But there comes a point, not dramatic but quietly decisive, when you realize control is exhausting, and worse, it's an illusion. Carl Jung saw this not as a weakness, but as a moment of psychological surrender, not giving up, but giving in to the deeper intelligence at work within you. When you stop resisting what your soul already knows, something unexpected happens. The world begins to soften. Opportunities flow more freely. Clarity arrives not as a shout, but as a calm, subtle knowing. It doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it does become aligned. To trust the current means to stop needing every answer now, to stop fighting the mystery, to believe that the chaos you're navigating has a rhythm, even if you can't hear it yet. It means choosing patience over panic, breath over control, presence over the need for guarantees. When you trust the current, you stop demanding that life obey your plan and start cooperating with the greater design unfolding through you. And what unfolds? Grace, synchronicity, a quiet, unwavering sense of rightness. This is not the path of resignation. It is the path of deeper participation. The river doesn't ask for your perfection. It only asks that you float, let go, and let it carry you. Not to where your mind insists you should be, but to where your soul already belongs. Every major transformation begins with a tremor, a flicker of fear, a pulse of doubt, a whisper that says, "Don't go any further." And that's exactly when you know you must. Carl Jung understood that fear is not the enemy. It's the torchbearer, the threshold guardian. It stands between the life you know and the life that is waiting to know you. We think of faith as a soft word, But real faith is fierce. It means walking into a fog with no map. It means hearing the voice inside say jump, while every conditioned part of you begs to stay safely on the ledge. True change is not a gentle stroll. It's a shedding, a rupture, a death of who you were, so that someone new can rise. And that death always hurts. But here's the paradox. The moment you act in courage, even while afraid, the fear begins to dissolve. Because courage is not the absence of fear, it's movement through it. And faith? It's not blind hope. It's radical trust that what is unfolding is bigger than what you can currently see. You don't need to feel ready. You won't. You just need to believe that who you're becoming is worth the risk of letting go of who you've been, because it always is. There is a silent intelligence in the way life moves, an unseen rhythm that answers not to pressure, but to presence. Carl Jung believed that when you begin to live in alignment with your authentic self, life stops feeling like a battlefield and starts behaving like a mirror. Because the universe doesn't respond to who you pretend to be, it responds to who you truly are. When you drop the mask, when you stop chasing approval, when you no longer force situations to fit your old narrative, things begin to shift. People who only recognized your mask fade away. Opportunities that felt impossible quietly arrive. Doors you never noticed before begin to open without a knock. This isn't magic, it's resonance. You are now radiating a frequency that matches your inner truth, and that frequency attracts what belongs to you. Not what your ego demanded, but what your soul always needed. Authenticity is not about being perfect, it's about being congruent. When what you think, say, and do are finally in harmony, you stop swimming upstream, you start flowing. And in that flow, you realize the universe was never ignoring you. It was just waiting for the real you to arrive. At the end of every search, every struggle, every sleepless night, there is a quiet truth waiting for you, like a lantern on a path long walked. You were never really lost. You just hadn't realized yet that the compass was inside you the whole time. Carl Jung taught that wholeness isn't found in fixing yourself, but in remembering yourself, in reclaiming the forgotten pieces, the buried instincts, the silenced voice that always knew the way. The world told you to look outward, for validation, for direction, for meaning, but the real map was written on your soul from the beginning. You just had to turn inward far enough, bravely enough to see it. The doubts, the detours, the breakdowns. They weren't failures, they were clues. Every painful ending was a course correction. Every shadow you faced was a doorway back to truth. And now you stand on the threshold not of a new world, but of a world that has always been yours. The one aligned with your essence, not your conditioning. So take this moment in, not as a finish line, but as a homecoming. You've walked through chaos. You've shed old versions. You've faced fears that once defined you. And now, you know something deeper than knowledge. You can trust yourself, not because you have all the answers, but because you finally remembered where to listen. That is the miracle of this journey. You weren't becoming someone new. You were returning to someone ancient and profoundly familiar, the truest version of you. Returning to yourself isn't loud or dramatic, it's quiet, brave, often invisible to the world. If you felt seen in these words, subscribing is a way to keep walking this inner path, where self-honesty leads to self-trust. And if this touched you, share it with someone who might need the same mirror. Sometimes the hardest journeys lead us back to the simplest truth. You were never really lost just learning how to come home.